Bildungsroman. 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 Bildungsroman? Hi, Alicia here. Welcome to my channel. Today I'm going to recommend some books from one of my favorite genres, or one of my favorite tropes, and that is coming of age. Yo, how's it going? How you doing? I hope you are doing well. Today I thought it would be really fun to recommend some books following one of my favorite tropes in books, and that is coming of age. In a previous video that was all around the theme of horror, I talked about how coming of age was one of my favorite tropes in horror books, but that is also true, and probably even more true, in novels in other genres as well. I've only very recently gotten into coming of age in horror, so I have a whole stack of books in other genres that fit that same coming of age trope. And some of these books have been like following me and have impacted me for a very long time in my life. Coming of age is definitely a genre that, when successful, really sticks with you. And it's also, there are thousands of books that fit into this genre, and I can't name every one that I've read. There are just far too many, and it is definitely a trope that is in a lot of classics. But I have 7 here to share with you today that are just the list that I have now. I thought it would be fun to come back to this video at a later date as well to add more to the series, because this is definitely not an exhaustive list. The reason why I love coming of age, and I feel like why a lot of readers love coming of age, is because it's an experience that everybody goes through. Everybody has to reach maturity at some point, and the whole point of a coming of age story is that it's not exclusively like a child, but it is usually a young person that has to either reach maturity through like some sort of forced experience that happens to them, a loss of innocence in some way. There's usually like a big thing that happens in this person's life, or maybe multiple big things that, you know, it's the end of childhood and the start of adulthood, whether that is abrupt, whether that is natural. And in these stories, there is usually such like rich character development. You usually meet these characters that you get to know so well and end up caring about so much. So it's in these stories that you definitely meet these characters that really like kind of haunt you for a long while after. So that is definitely the case for the books that I have to share with you today. I also tried to cover a good range in diversity. There are some from male and female perspective in here. I do find that coming of age is pretty like dominant on the male perspective, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. There are some really great stories with male protagonists. I just, you know, I wish there was some more diverse representation in that coming of age trope. So I'll go through these books. They are in no particular order. They are all just 7 books that I really, really loved and highly recommend. So without further ado, let's get into those books. So the first book that I have to share with you is Their Eyes Were Watching God by Zora Neale Hurston. This is an American modern classic that was published in 1937 by an African-American woman. This book was definitely published before its time. It was not really appreciated in the time that it was published, but has basically since then become just like a feminist work of art, pretty much. This follows a woman named Janie Crawford from adolescence to adulthood. It's one of those stories that's told from the end and then goes back to the beginning and tells the story. And this is about a girl in Florida who is the child of rape. And because of this, she has a very strained relationship with her mother and lives with and is taken care of by her grandmother. And this book basically follows Janie through her life, but specifically through the lens of the various relationships that she has. The general heart of this is Janie, when she is young, her grandmother puts her into pretty much an arranged marriage with a farmer, not necessarily because she's trying to like marry her granddaughter off, but because she wants her granddaughter to have a comfortable and protected life. So her grandmother is very much saying, you should be comfortable, you should be protected. Your happiness doesn't really matter. Your love doesn't really, that's not what's important. You being safe is what's important. And Janie very much disagrees, and she wants love in her life. She wants real love in her life. So this book follows her through various relationships in her life. And this is also so interesting because Janie also, even though the book is about her romantic experiences or her like relationships with people, they're not all romantic, it's not about, Janie is not just about the men in her life. This is very much about a woman who wants love, but also does not want to be defined by the relationships that she has. She doesn't want to be defined by the men in her life. This is such a powerful story. There is some things that happen in this book that, like, there are twists that happen here that will shake you. This is a beautiful book with a powerful protagonist, and I highly recommend following Janie's life. The second book that I would like to recommend is The Story of Edgar Sawtelle by David Wroblewski. This book was published in 2008, and this book is set in the rural Midwest. I believe it is set in Wisconsin, and we are following a young boy named Edgar who was born mute. He does not talk, and he communicates with his family using sign language and also like made up signs. They have their own internal family signs with how they communicate with each other. And this book is set on a dog ranch, essentially. The Sawtelle family, they breed this fictional breed of dog, and this breed of dog is essentially designed to be the ultimate companion to a person. So when someone goes to buy one of these dogs, the human does not pick the dog picks the human. So it is essentially just this really intuitive breed of dog that is designed to be man's best friend. So this book is so compelling because it is a modern retelling of Hamlet, essentially a modern retelling of Hamlet set in the rural Midwest. So we are following Edgar, and he is we see the whole all of the events of this book through Edgar's point of view. He does not talk, so we are either in his head or just seeing what Edgar sees. And it is about Edgar and his relationship with his dog, Almondine. Almondine is one of the dogs that was bred here that Edgar has taken care of from birth. And they have this non-verbal communication and relationship between each other. They are very like intuitive to what each other is thinking and feeling. It's very much like an emotional and intellectual, like psychic connection that they have to one another. And so all of the events of the story take place through the two of their point of view. So if you've read Hamlet, you know that there is a lot of tragedy that occurs. So imagine some of the events of Hamlet, but in this rural setting. This is definitely worth the time. It's a bit of a chunky one, but that is all just like richly developing this story and the events of the Sawtelle family on their dog ranch. So if you're a dog person and you like dogs, this one is definitely worth checking out. So the third book that I have to recommend is Who Fears Death by Nnedi Okorafor. This is the same author who wrote the Binti series, which is also very incredible. Who Fears Death is a post-apocalyptic fantasy story set in a kind of fictionalized version of the future in Sudan. Who Fears Death is following a girl named Onyesenwu, who again is the child of rape. So she is from a community, and there is like these warring colonies happening here, and her mother was raped by a light-skinned man from one of these other colonies. That colony they basically weaponize rape. So Onyesenwu is born. She is much lighter skinned than everybody else in her community, and that very much gives away that she is the child of rape. So she is kind of alienated from the people around her. It's difficult for her to meet people and have relationships in her community because she's very much like, people try to ignore that she is there. She is a presence that that reflects like the tragedy of what has happened to them. And Onyesenwu's father, he was a sorcerer in this group that he is from. He has magic abilities that he ended up giving to her when she was born. So this book very much follows her as she comes of age, and the rage that she was essentially born with and then also cultivated as she grew. Like, she is very much loathes where she came from and what has happened to her. So this book follows her as she goes on this quest with these, and she bands these people together with her, and she's on a quest to go and find her father, or the man who raped her mother, and kill him with the very same magic that he gave to her. So there is some fantasy elements in here. This book is very much a political commentary on very real things happening in the world. This book is extremely dark and gritty, and the author really goes to some very dark and literal places in the storytelling of this. There are trigger warnings abound. There is one very graphic scene of a female circumcision in this book that was so hard to read. So just be aware of that. But this was an exceptional book and an exceptional addition to the coming-of-age genre. Highly recommend. The next coming-of-age book that I would like to recommend is Extremely Loud and Incredibly Close by Jonathan Safran Foer. This book was published in 2005, and this is very much a contemporary story. This is following a 9-year-old boy named Oscar, and it is set 1 year after Oscar's father was killed in 9/11. He was in the World Trade Center when it went down. And this book is from the point of view of Oscar, and it is very much first person in his mind. And Oscar is 9. He is a child who is very much experiencing grief and trauma associated with the loss of his father, but doesn't have the, vocabulary and mental awareness to really get across how he's feeling. And this is a beautiful story. It is basically an adventure novel where Oscar, 1 year after his father died, Oscar is looking around through his father's things, and he finds a key in a vase. And he basically invents this whole fantastic idea in his mind about, oh, I wonder what this unlocks. This is like a quest that my father left for me. So this book follows Oscar over the course of, I think it was only a couple of months, where he is essentially by himself exploring New York City on a quest, trying to figure out what this key opens, and the riddles that his dad left for him. The book is told in mixed media in the sense that you will have pages of regular text and dialogue and prose, but then it'll be mixed in with photography and visuals and almost even tactile things. It's very much like a kid's detective story of him trying to both unlock the past, but also work through some very powerful trauma and grief. This is one of those stories where the reader is definitely more aware of what Oscar is feeling than even Oscar himself. And this book is very much about finding closure and coming to terms with and accepting a tragic loss. This is a very charming book. It has some beautiful passages in it, and as much as it is dealing with a very sad, difficult subject and like a loss that was very sudden and tragic, I feel like Oscar is a very relatable character, and there is just so much to get out of this story. This was definitely one that I loved. Next up, we have one of my favorite novels ever of all time. This is another contemporary story. This is Lullabies for Little Criminals by Heather O'Neill. This was published in 2006, and this book follows a 12-year-old girl named Baby. And Baby lives in Montreal, downtown Montreal, with her father, Jules. Baby's mother has passed away, and Jules is very quickly spiraling more and deeper into his heroin addiction. So Jules is addicted to heroin. He is the sole caretaker of Baby. So Baby is essentially taking care of herself. Jules definitely loves her. He just has his own problems. So this book is following Baby over the course of a couple of years. One of the main characters in this is Baby's boyfriend, who is a pimp named Alphonse, and he basically picks Baby up, takes care of her, and really introduces her into a new life. And again, this is one of those stories that is from the point of view of Baby, and she just has this like childhood innocence in how she sees the world. She is a very hopeful character. She sees a lot of hope and romanticism and really is finding comfort in the things that are happening to her. And as a reader, you are seeing an extremely like tragic story of a girl who never really had a chance to have a different life. She was dealt a very shitty hand, but she's dealing with it. She's not upset about her life. So it's very much a tragedy of perspective. This is one of the most beautifully written books I have ever read. It has just like these beautiful passages, and it's definitely a difficult read. It definitely explores child abuse. She is 12 when she is picked up by this pimp, but this is one of the most beautiful books I have ever read and is a beautiful coming of age story. It is hopeful in the tragedy that is happening, and I can't recommend this one enough. Next up, we've got The Song of Achilles by Madeline Miller. This book was published in 2012 and is a retelling of the Battle of Troy. This follows Achilles from childhood to adulthood, basically everything leading up to the Trojan War and Achilles' major role in the Iliad. This book is told from the point of view of Patroclus, and Patroclus is basically a footnote in the Iliad. His existence plays a very like catalytic, you know, his existence was a catalyst for the eventual fall of Achilles. I'm sorry if that is a spoiler, but I mean, this is Greek mythology, and that's pretty well out there. So Patroclus's role is a catalyst to the fall of Achilles, but he's not really that important of a character in the Iliad. Like, it doesn't really go into a whole bunch about him, but this book does. This book it's from the point of view of Patroclus and is following Patroclus and Achilles from childhood to adulthood, and is very much peppering their history with like incredibly rich storytelling and coming of age. So Patroclus is essentially a prince that is exiled from his own family, and he is given over to Achilles and into Achilles' care. They are the same age, and they are basically raised together as siblings. And this story very much develops their friendship, their relationship to each other. This book even has a queer romance in it between those two characters, which was just like a beautiful addition to the story. And it is very much chronicling the coming of age of Achilles. This book is about Achilles, but from someone else's point of view. Basically, the person behind the scenes who sees the real Achilles. Like, it is saying that Patroclus is the one who knows Achilles more than any other person that has ever existed. And Madeline Miller really explores that development and that story and really brings so much more of a character to Achilles, so much more of a real person, a real personality to that character, and the two of them together. It's just a beautiful story of love and friendship and romance and battle and Greek mythology. There are gods, there is rage, there is war. This is a spanning novel that spans like decades and is wonderful. And last but not least, the last coming of age novel that I would like to recommend in this video is The Goldfinch by Donna Tartt. This is a tome of a literary fiction story that is absolutely worth the time that it would take to read this tome. This book is exceptional. I think about this book like daily, and I think about the character in this story. This is just one of the most powerful and most profound coming of age stories I have ever read. This is probably my favorite one on this list in terms of the development of the character. This book follows a boy named Theo Decker from about the age of 13 to about the age of 30. It follows him for about 15 years. And this book starts in New York, in basically an alternate now version of New York, where there was a terrorist attack at the Metropolitan Museum of Art. And when Theo is 13, him and his mom are in the Met when this terrorist attack happens, and his mother ends up dying. So this book chronicles Theo basically right after this like extremely traumatic and life-changing thing that has happened to him, and just like follows where his life goes from there. And this is one of those books that starts, it doesn't start at the end, it kind of starts at a critical moment and then goes back in time and tells the story of Theo. Theo is one of those characters that he is flawed, he has problems, he does really bad things, he does stupid things, but you understand him and you root for him and you want him to succeed. He is just one of the realest characters I have ever read. There is a friendship in this book between Theo and another boy named Boris that is, again, just one of the realest relationships ever. They are both just like kind of shitty kids, but they are both a product of the things that have happened to them. In just like a general plot point of view, this book is also very much about antique furniture restoration, and I know that sounds really boring, but I trust me that it is not. Like, Donna Tartt is an exceptional writer. Her attention to detail is amazing. Her sense of place and her, like, you know, development of story, development of plot, development of place, it is like unmatched. Like, this is one of the most beautifully written books I have ever read. Theo is a character that I think about all the time. He is just a person that I have been haunted by since I read this. The Goldfinch. If there was one book on this list that I'm like, oh, definitely read this one, it would be The Goldfinch. If you like coming of age, this is one of the best books I have ever read. Here is a good stack of coming of age stories. Let me know if you've read any of these and what you thought. Let me know if you now want to read any of these. I would love to talk to people about these books. Let me know if there are any books like these that you loved and that you think I should read. I'm definitely always on the hunt for more good coming of age. Again, it is a genre that it is a trope that just works really well for me. Usually when I read these books, they are the ones that stick with me for a big chunk of time. So thank you again for being here. Thanks for watching this. I really appreciate it, and I love just talking about books with y'all. So until next time, see you, pals.